do you mean by the metals and non-metals? All the elements are classified into two types, that is the metals and non-metals. Now, this classification of the elements is done based on the physical properties and chemical properties of the elements. Now, the easy process of classifying or gathering them into groups is by the help of the physical properties only, because the physical properties we can able to see through our naked eyes, and it is very easy to identify the group of metals having the similar properties. Now let us discuss the physical properties of metals. When a metal is said to be, that means when an element is said to be as metal because of these type of physical properties. These four types of physical properties are the good essential qualities of these metals. Now let us discuss the first one, that is, if you observe, let us take some elements such as iron, copper, aluminium, magnesium, sodium, lead, zinc and tin and any other elements. If you gather these elements and if you see those physical properties, you will be identifying them and you will be arranging them into some categories, right? Now here you will be seeing that the first property of metals is that the pure state or the pure form of a metal will always be in shining. That is, the shining surface will be the resembling of the pure state of the metal, and that is said to be as metallic luster. The shining surface of the pure state of a metal is considered as metallic luster. This is the first property of metals. And the second property of metals is, I hope you have learned it in your lower sections in 8th and 9th, that is the metals which are turned into sheets, that is formed into sheets, are said to be as malleability of the metals. That is the second property of the metals, and the best examples of the malleability of metals is gold and silver. The third property is, if you observe some metals, if you hit them or if you strike those metals towards the hard surfaces, if for example let us take the school bell, right? If you take a school bell, that will be very hard, right? It's made up of iron, right? If you hit those iron, that is if it is hurt by a metal, if you strike the metal to a harder surfaces, then the sound will be generated. The sound will be produced because of the striking or towards the hard surfaces. So this sound generation by the metals, that is like the sounds generated by the metals, are said to be as the property such as sonorous. The property name is said to be as sonorous, that is the striking of hard surface leads to the sonorous sounds. And this is the third property of the metals. Let us see the fourth property. That is, if you observe that metals acts as a good conductors of heat and good conductors of electricity. Because why? Let us see with some activities in order to understand in detail about the good characteristics, that is good conductors of heat and electricity. Now here we will be seeing the fourth point, that is metals act as good conductors of heat and at the same time good conductors of electricity. Let us see the last point, that is the fifth point, the physical properties of metals. That is, the metals can be made into wires, that is it will be made into wires, and that property is said to be as ductility. Ductility is nothing but thin wires. If you see, if you gold, you can make that gold into 2 kilometers of length of thin wires. So that is said to be as a good example for ductility, gold as the metal. If you observe these metals, that is gold, silver, iron, all these metals are good examples of ductility and malleability, because of these properties we are able to maintain or we are able to transform into different shapes and different forms as per our desired conditions. Okay. Now let us take the good conductors. How these metals act as a good conductors of heat. Now let us see. Because as these metals are having the high melting points, they are said to be as the good conductors of heat. Now if you observe here, the sonorous sound, it will be most coming for the iron, right? Because of hard surfaces. If you see towards the good conductor nature of metals towards heat is very good for silver and copper. Silver and copper acts as the good conductors of heat. That means they are playing a major role of having that capacity of absorption of heat or high melting points. And now let us see the good conductor nature of electricity. How metals are said to be as good conductors of electricity. If you observe, you will be taking the copper wires, right? Copper wires are acting as a good conductors of electricity. In your household equipment also, if you see the wires which are passing towards every circuits, right? That is, you will be seeing that PVC, that is rubber coated like structures, that is polyvinyl chloride. These metals, that is polyvinyl chloride structure, that is it will be like a plastic wire which is placed on the outer surface of the copper wires, because copper wires are very good conductors of electricity. They easily catch up the electricity, right? They are easy to pass, because even though we touch that copper wires, it is very dangerous when the power is supplied, right? Now, so in order to reduce the harm because of these, we will be coating these copper wires with the help of the polyvinyl chloride, that is rubber-like structure, in order to prevent the shocks or unnecessary things, disasters because of this current or electricity. Now, in this, we will be discussing that. I want to give one question like, what are the metals which are useful in making of cooking vessels, and what are the metals which are used for making purposes, some vessels or some instruments? What is the most useful metal? Can you guess it? That is, it is nothing but the stainless steel you will be using, right? Brass, aluminium, all these metals we will be using in order to make the copper vessels, aluminium vessels and the steel vessels, right? And if you observe the stainless steel vessels, when you bring as pure, it will be very shiny. That is, shiny coated surface is provided towards them. Now let us see the other one, that is the lead and mercury. These two metals are acting as a poor conductors of heat, because as mercury is very having the high temperature, that is, it is in liquid form even at the room temperature also. Now let us see, if you get a glimpse of idea, that is the physical properties of metals are what, that is the first property is metallic luster, and the second property is malleability, and the third property is sonorous, and the fourth property is good conductors of heat and good conductors of electricity, and the fifth property is ductility. All these five properties together classifies the metals as one group of elements. Now let us see the physical properties of non-metals and in detail with activities. Now let us see the non-metals physical properties. Previously we have learned regarding the metals physical properties. Now let us discuss the non-metals and their physical properties. When coming to non-metals, you can see carbon, sulfur, iodine, oxygen and nitrogen. All these comes under non-metals category, right? Now if you observe these non-metals, they can be either in solids or liquid forms, and only the one which is in liquid form is bromine. That is, bromine will be mostly in liquid form. Remaining all other non-metals will be mostly in solid form. Okay. Now, is this only the physical properties are the only things by which we can classify the metals and non-metals? No, that is because, for example, let us take some metals and some exceptional cases of these metals and non-metals. Now let us discuss the physical properties of non-metals. If you observe, there are some exceptional cases in metals and non-metals. That is, let us see the 5 points of exceptional cases. That is, if you come under metals, if you take the mercury which is existing as solids at room temperature, that means mercury will be existing as liquid. If you see, that is in a viscous form, right? Now if you take metals such as, almost all metals will be in solid form, but these mercury will be in liquid form. Now the second point is metals which is having high melting points, right? We have studied that metals will be having high melting points, but when coming to gallium and cesium are also the metals, but at the same time they are having the low melting points. If you observe, if you take gallium and cesium in your hand, it will melt, even in your hand also it melts very fastly. That is, it is because of the low melting points. And if you take iodine is a non-metal, right? Iodine is a non-metal. Even though it is non-metal, it is having the lustrous physical property. said previously, only the metals will be having the lustrous, malleability, ductility properties, right? But this iodine, which is acting as a non-metal, is also having this lustrous property. Now let us take fourth exemption case, that is the carbon compounds. This carbon will be existing in different forms. This carbon is non-metal. Even though this is the non-metal, it is having the different forms of structures, that is allotropes. That is, if you see, the carbon is having different allotropes, that is diamond. Diamond is one of the allotrope of carbon, and this carbon as acting as a non-metal is having the high melting points and high boiling points. If you observe, only the metals is having the high melting points and boiling points. But if you consider here, the diamond, which is acting as the carbon allotrope, is a non-metal, is also having the high melting points and boiling points. If you see the graphite, this is another form of allotrope of carbon, and this is also acting as the good conductor of electricity. Previously we have discussed that metals are having the good conductivity nature of electricity and heat, but this graphite is also acting as a good conductor of electricity. By this we can classify that we cannot divide the metals and non-metals based on only the physical properties, because the physical properties are varying. Some are for metals and some exemption cases for non-metals and metals. So we have to go further, that is the chemical properties, by which the chemical properties can exactly differ the metals and non-metals, and we can classify them into two groups of individuals. Now here we will be seeing that is this alkaline metals. If you observe the alkaline metals such as lithium, sodium and potassium, all these are alkaline metals, and these are very soft in nature, even though we can cut them with a knife. That is alkaline metals such as lithium and sodium. Now if you see the formula for sodium, the symbol is Na, right? Symbolic representation. Now these why they are very soft is because they are having the low densities and low melting points. That is the reason behind the soft nature of these alkaline metals. And the third and last point is the non-metals, when they are reacted, that is, by this what we can conclude is, with the help of the only physical properties, we cannot just justify or we cannot judge whether it is a metal or non-metal. So we are further going to chemical properties. These chemical properties for non-metals, when reacted with acids, they give the resultants, that is oxides. These non-metals, when dissolved in water, for example take non-metals like carbon, sulfur, iodine, if at all they dissolve in water, they will give us acidic oxides. If you take metals, they will give basic oxides, that is basic in nature. You know that acids and bases, in the second chapter you have learned that acids are classified, that is changing the red, that is litmus paper, that is the indicator, national indicator. You will be taking turmeric powder, right? Acidic nature means blue to red, that is blue litmus paper is changed to red litmus paper. If you take bases, that is red litmus paper to blue litmus paper, right? Red to blue color and blue to red color. By this color differentiation, we can identify whether they are acids or bases. Now in this, we will be taking the non-metals are having the acidic oxides, while the metals are having the basic oxides. This is the major difference between the chemical properties of acids and, that is the non-metals and metals. By this we will be classifying them into two groups, that is non-metals and metals. Now we will be further learning in detail about the reaction of the metals with oxides and their chemical properties.